Welcome to today's episode of Growth Leaders Podcast. Today, we are thrilled to kickstart our leadership journey with none other than Amanda, a distinguished woman leader from one of the world-leading supply chain technology companies, e2open. Our focus today revolves around the cornerstone of organizational success, building high-performance teams. Amanda brings a wealth of experience and insights gained from her impactful leadership role at e2open, a powerhouse in the technology industry. Join us as we delve into strategies, challenges, and learnings essentials for fostering team excellence in today's dynamic landscape. Get ready to be inspired and empowered as we embark on this enlightening discussion with Amanda. Welcome to Growth Leaders Podcast, where leadership meets innovation. Welcome, Amanda.
Yes, thank you, Peter. Happy to be here today.
That's great. So, you got an intense background in the logistics and logistics industry, I would say. But before we delve into that, I would like to kick off on a little bit on the private side. So, if you would like to just give a brief introduction of yourself and who you are and what you're doing and your interest outside work.
Yeah, so great question. Outside of work, I am lucky to be a mom of two. I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old and a spouse. So we live a very active life. We like to try to be outdoors as much as we can in the summertime, in the spring. In fact, I just got done planning our next road trip, which is
Mhm.
6 months away. So we're very excited to just be back outdoors in the fresh air. Outside of traveling and the outdoor activities like hiking and kayaking, I did get back into soccer, and even still considering getting back into rugby. So trying to
Oh
stay
my gosh.
active and not beat myself up too much, but find that personal outlet that I can have just that space to grow a little bit differently, right?
Yeah. So is that the way you balance, private life and work life? Because that's many times actually an issue for not at least women leaders, because they have not only their work, they have expectations and they have the kids and so on. So how do you balance work life and
Um,
private life?
Yeah, so a lot of it is just self-aware, right? Like I notice my body starts to get a little more stressful when I'm spending too much time in one area. So I do a lot of journaling for that self-reflection. I even kind of describe how I focus my priority like a triangle, like a tilted
Yeah.
triangle. So at the 3 points, I have work, I have my family, and I have myself. And I got to make sure that's kind of balancing the circular motion, right? So that everyone's getting equal attention, burnout's not happening, and everything is being able to thrive and grow.
Can you feel when it's getting heated?
I
Yeah, I mean,
can,
in a
yeah.
little bit in advance, because I think that's a skill which you really, especially if you're working in the mid management, because it can be
Hmm.
rather stressful because you have directives coming sometimes from top above, and then you have employees and you have projects and customers and all that, and then you have family on top of that. And that can be so stressful. And I've seen it actually very close many times where if you don't know where that level is, it can actually go towards a burnout. So it's great to hear that you got that instinct doing that. So let's have a question then on e2open. It's a global company. It's leading in the supply chain role.
Yes.
So what do you do and how many employees have you got
So, yeah,
in your
global
role?
company. So, I believe the company itself has over 4,000 employees and team members. I myself am housed inside our logistics as a service department, which is
Yeah.
um, nicely placed inside our logistics pillar, nonetheless. But inside our department, we have about 300, 350 people. My team, I oversee between 50 and 60 directly.
Okay. And out of those 50, 60, how many are direct reports to you?
About a tenth of them, right? So
Yeah. So you are
Yes.
in the span of control on that.
Yeah.
I mean, that normally says 10 to 12. Could be a little bit more in the consultancy industry as such. So if you look back, and of course where you are right now as a leader, so is there any specific experiences as you have seen which have had a profound impact on your leadership style? I mean, it could be further back, but have you
Yeah,
reflected upon that?
there's two stories that kind of stick out really prevalent in my mind. The first one was when I was younger, right? I grew up, I
Mm,
played soccer. I played on a few different teams. Sometimes the teams overlapped. One team I played on was a selects team, so a more premier league. And then the other team I was playing on at the exact same time was a rec league with all of my school friends. And the coach of the selects team, the premier team, came to me and he goes, I don't like that you're playing on two teams at the same time. I need you to pick one. And I'm sure he thought that I would pick the selects team, right? If I'm trying to
okay.
advance my soccer career, if I'm trying to grow and develop in soccer, I should take that path, right? That seems like a logical move to make. I took the other path, though. I decided to
Mm,
go play the rec league with my friends. And the reason I did that is I had an awesome coach growing up who happened to be my dad at the time, who instilled
mhm,
a motto in us, which was play hard, have fun. And that's something I carry with me today. Like if I'm anything I'm doing outside of work, inside of work, I got to work hard, but I got to have fun with what I'm doing, right? There has to be a level of curiosity,
mm,
a level of intrigue and passion for it. So it's important to hold that with. So that was a lesson I learned very young is that, okay, I'm going to play hard, I'm going to have fun, and then people are going to give me these opportunities to choose things. So I need to
mm,
understand that dynamic as well. Fast forward into my working career, as I was interviewing for the director position, we have a pretty intensive round of 3 interview cycles for our department with it. And I
mhm,
was in the interview cycle. I took a different approach. I took the mindset of, hey, not only is this them interviewing me, it's me interviewing them, right? This is my interview time. So I took that mentality going into the interview. I stole the first 10 to 15 minutes of the interview process and said, I want to give you a presentation on me and how I think I can benefit in this role. Well, it turns out I didn't
so
get the position at that time, but it didn't stop me. I didn't feel like I
mm,
did anything wrong in having that approach. In fact, afterwards, I was asked, well, why did you take that approach? And the answer that I gave is, well, why wouldn't I? Everyone says an interview is their time and their space, and it's important to ask questions back and forth. So why not view it like it's mine instead of just
mm,
yours? That was
uh,
interesting. And to take that mentality, which is different than the status quo, right? And
yeah, it
then
is
to
indeed.
then have a feedback conversation afterwards. Yeah, I like it hurt that I didn't get the job at that time, but it didn't stop anything for me, right? I hadn't
And it was a
lost
learning
anything.
experience also for you.
Exactly that. It was,
Absolutely.
okay, I learned something here. Next time I probably don't need to do that,
Mm,
but continue on with the work. And then from there, it was like, all right, we're not going after a promotion right now. Where else can we put time and attention for growth opportunities? So I became
yeah.
more involved in our, at the time, it went from Blue Jay Women's Network to e2open Win, which is our women inclusion network. So I became more of a leader within that network and just said, I will continue to expand and to grow. And here is a different opportunity that I can look at.
That's great. So you're touch basing on a very important thing, and that is the motivation. And motivation comes from something you want to do, which you
Mhm.
like, and with people around you. So jumping into a little bit about what we talk about here is about the team development. Um, so I have a question here for you. So building high performance teams is of course very important. And what key strategies do you see? I mean, to foster collaboration, uh, trust, and innovation within your teams? I'm talking here about the motivation and so on also,
Yeah.
but what are your key things in this? Because it's super important.
Yeah. So with us being a technology company, there's a few moving parts, right? So we have the technology that we're working with. Our department itself is a managed services department. So now we're more
Mm,
customer service based. And then, of course, the human aspect of it. And anything that I do for a team, we can't forget about the humanness, right? The people.
mm,
That sense of culture and community is kind of what a corporate America will put a label on. But it's that the fact that with the technology, with the customer service, at the end of the day, we still have to look at the team member, the human part of it, right?
mm,
So when I'm looking at a team, I can go, okay, who's strong in the technology or who's strong in the customer service? I think the important part there is the who, right? I'm not saying I need someone to fit a box. I'm saying I need to find the right person to support the activity.
yeah.
So that comes into starting to build that trust in that relationship and knowing what people are motivated by, and if they're not if they're lacking motivation, what are they curious about? Because if they're curious about something, that's sometimes more important than motivation for it.
Yeah, it is. And what you also say here about, as a leader, identifying people's skill sets. I mean, everybody has great
Yeah,
skill sets, but they are stronger and weaker in different areas. And that
exactly.
is, of course, a clue. But how do you continuously get a drive? Because you have two parameters. If we look at your existing teams, you got your direct reports, but you have also the bigger team. So how do you foster that? If we look at a cycle or however you would like to look at
Yeah,
it.
great question, right? So going back to that trust and transparency. So I think it comes to starting with the communication base, right?
Yeah.
I can let the teams know what my expectations of success are, and I say, go do it. But that doesn't really give them a tool on how to navigate through that, right? So I'm working with them on those tools, right? Sometimes it is, how do we find a solution to this problem? Or how do we even find a project to work on? Kind of thing, or how do I navigate this difficult conversation? So I like to be tool based and making sure that my team members feel like they have the resources, whether that's me directly
Hmm.
or it's something I can hand off to them on, like a tip on how to handle a difficult situation. A lot of that in that situation, it's that listening and reflecting. We've talked previously about just awareness and reflection on how different situations occur. So in all of that, one of the tools I like to do is that reflection tool. Okay, after we've done a project or after we've had that difficult situation, let's sit in
Yeah.
it a little bit. What worked? What didn't work? What did we like about how we approached it? Or what did we think we needed to change? So if we're not going to take the time to learn from those situations, then our tools are never going to change and they're never going to evolve. And then our teams are going to be pretty
Hmm.
stagnant. Um,
And
Technology,
how do you
supply
do
chain.
that? Do you do that in a physical meeting, or do you even run it on Teams or Zoom or something like that?
Yeah, I mean,
Because
in
it
person
is
would be
important.
awesome, right?
Yeah,
Lately, for the past couple months, it's been all virtual, right? So our office is
yeah.
under some construction right now, so we're not going to be able to get in there until a March, April-ish timeframe. So everything's been virtual for the past several months.
And how does that work for you? And if you look at your direct, I guess they're pretty used to it, but how do you see it working out?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to that engagement, right? So when you're in a
Yeah.
Teams call or on a virtual meeting, you can get a pretty good sense if someone's paying attention or listening or engaging in the content or the conversation, right? I'm watching hand gestures, right? My hands are up right
Mm,
now, or I'm watching where the eyes are looking. Are they trying to make it look like they're doing eye contact? Or are they looking at the camera? Or is their camera completely off? So first, getting that level of, if we're going to talk about tools, if we're going to talk about development, I need your engagement.
yeah.
And I can't have your engagement if I can actively see that you aren't. And those are those subtle nuanced cues. Where are you looking? If I'm looking at a monitor over here, I might be working on an Excel sheet. I might just be looking at notes. It's hard to tell, right? So
Yeah.
even in a virtual sense, you can pick up on a lot of the body language to say, what's my level of engagement in the discussion and how far can we take it before I've completely lost them? And at that
So
point, it's okay to stop.
yeah. So I think you actually touched basing on one of the very critical leadership today issues, and that's actually identifying both the engagement, but you also have the follow up from project, etc., and identifying how your employees actually how are they feeling?
Mm-hmm.
Are they on top? Do they have problem at home? Do they have a problem with family or anything? Could be, which means identifying that as a leader is so critical today. But you don't do it because you don't meet them directly. So you actually have to, as you say, how are they? How engaged are they?
Yeah.
Do they look happy? Do all that? And actually being dare to ask those maybe hard questions. So how are you today, Amanda? Has anything happened?
Yeah.
So how do you handle that? Are you confronting them in
I
that?
do.
Well,
I
if
really
yeah,
do, right? So I recently did a burnout training for our department. And one of those things about burnout is that it's not just work related, right? There could be stuff going on in our personal life that
yeah,
floods over into work and vice versa. So being transparent with myself and what's going on in my world has opened up a platform to say, it's okay not to be okay today, right? If you got this
mm,
personal thing going on, let's not just ignore it and say today is fine, right? Fine is a trap. No one's actually fine. Um, but let's acknowledge it and let's work with that type of energy today. There's no point in asking you to
mm,
give me more energy than what you have, because then the quality of work may go down, and it's not relationship building at that point. But if I understand what's going on, if you know that I'm going to share what's going on in my life, and then you're going to feel comfortable sharing that same type of information back with me, then we're going to
yeah,
get to a better spot. And it doesn't
yeah.
need to be all the dirty details of it. It could
No,
just be
no,
as simple of, I'm struggling with this thing at home.
yeah.
And I know. And then we know together, because life does
Mm,
happen around us.
and that is all built upon trust, where you are providing, you know, you're trusting them, giving pieces of your life, and the other
Hmm.
way around. And I personally believe that that is one very, very important things, but where people and leaders actually are missing out. We have had a very high turnover of people, and there's a reason for it. Because I don't think everyone is felt they are seen as an individual, that they are trying hard, but there are obstacles around the corner. We have seen it at Chart. I mean, we built this company 100% virtual from day one, and there are a few things which has to come into that. I mean, there's a lot of freedom into it, but there's also a lot of accountability.
Yeah.
And from my side, I know I have to learn the guys and girls. I have to have great follow up with them, and as you say, being open from my side towards them, so I get the same back. And that normally comes back, I could see it when you get feedback from your employees if they're leaving. I think you have got positive feedback on that. If you have had someone leaving, I guess there is.
I mean, HR hasn't passed along the notes. I hope they are positive, though, but the conversations I have leading up to that last day tend to be
Yeah,
positive. Regardless of why a team member is leaving, I want to be supportive of them, right? I want to make sure that they're being handed off successfully, right? I don't want them to leave the company in a bad experience. I want to make sure that they know that they can still come to me and ask questions outside of work if they need anything. And then just to continue building that relationship, right? Just because we
yeah,
now work for different companies doesn't mean our relationship has to be done. A lot of people
No,
have that mentality though.
okay. Yeah. No, we learned that early on when we were working I was working at IBM, and then you learn pretty fast that at a certain stage the other one could be the boss, and it turns because they were always having
Yes.
organizational changes at least once a year. It could be 2 or 3 also. So
Hmm.
uh, moving into you're engaged in women leadership, I understand. Also on the DEI a little
Yeah.
bit,
Yeah.
diversity, inclusion, belonging. So what are you doing there, and what are you discussing, and so
So
it's just
yeah,
curious.
I recently made a change there, right? So end of the year, I stepped down from the steering committee. I'm still involved as a member of the community, but as a leader inside the organization, or inside the network, right? The Women Inclusion Network for e2open, I was involved in a few of our different pillars. So in the 4 years that I was on the steering committee, I jumped around from being part of the mentorship committee. Then I jumped over to global engagement, then regional engagement, then network promotion. I've wrapped up with the regional engagement and finally handed everything off. But luckily enough, had a meeting with some of our HR leaders this week to say, how can we still improve the network?
Is
And
this
what would it
all
look?
within? Is this all with the e2open?
This is, yep, all with it with
Yeah.
inside
Okay.
inside the organization, yeah. Which is awesome. So again, with this network, we focus on the word inclusion, right? So
Mm.
yes, it's a women's network, but it's inclusion network. So we're inviting all genders. In fact, we have about 20 to 22% of our of our members that are male, right? So I mean,
Okay.
a lot of people are getting benefit out of it and understanding what the dynamic and struggles are across both sides of the aisle.
Okay. And what are typical questions coming up there? I understand there are different topics, but I would presume one of the underlying question is to make sure there are somehow even leaders, or make sure it's always the the right leader who gets the work. What type of questions are in there?
A lot of it is actually around the soft skills. How do I
Yeah.
ask my boss to be put on a different project? Or how can I improve my presentation skills so I can um, apply for the next promotion? Oddly enough, not so much about the technology, right? I mean, there's subject matter experts
Mm.
inside the department that those team members are working with. So if we're working with them like on a technology question, it's not so much what does this technology do, but how do I have the confidence to approach the project lead and get more details
Mm.
or get more responsibility? So it's all those soft skills to help them, what I like to do, expand the comfort zone, right? You're working on
Yeah.
your growth and your development, you're hesitant to do it. So small steps. Small, I'm going to take one step out of my comfort zone instead of a mile out of it.
Yeah. Because I presume, at least what I've seen in the technology, it is fairly open to men and women in more or less all positions. But then there could be different, maturity from individuals. But I've also seen in other industries who has for decades been male, in all major positions, and that has been a tough journey for many women to fight their way through, uh,
Yeah.
because they don't have the network, and this is the way it's done, and so on.
Yeah, I
So
feel like that's coming to a little bit of a change, right? If we put the technology side of piece and look at the transportation part of our company,
yeah,
yeah, it's still very much male dominated, but I'm seeing the ratio change, right?
yeah,
And the reason I say that is we recently did a project implementation with a company, and of that, I was part of the project team, and from our department side, the three leaders, all women.
yeah.
So one of the first of of like a kickoff implementation project where we've sent 3 women to own and get the project going. And that's huge. That's a big shift in dynamic, right? And
Yeah.
again, it's not going to happen over time. We're not just going to have women come in and rule the world mindset, but the space is there for us. And I think it's
Yeah.
important to recognize that no one's shutting us out. It is a hard industry. It is a competitive industry. But women are competitive and women are strong. And there is a space for us in there.
Yeah. So continuing on that, so what advice would you give women moving or have aspirations getting into the leadership roles based on your experience so far?
Yeah, in
Is
my
there any?
experience, leaning into more of that authentic self. Um,
Yeah.
there's pre-work that comes with knowing that, but the more you are your authentic self, the better off you're going to be. You're not going to have to worry about which mask you're putting on with which team member or which leadership member. You just get to be and exist and do what you're passionate about. So be your authentic self. Now, what does that mean to be your authentic self? First, you got to figure out who that person is. And that's when you got to be aware of how you interact, right? You got to be interacting, writing your communication style, but then also back to that point, reflect on it. You can't just say, okay, I do it, so this is the right way. Reflect on it. Is it the right way? Is it a productive way for you? Is there another way that might work for you? So that curiosity to know what's working, what's not working, trial and error, finding your authentic self, those are how I personally have created a bigger path forward for myself.
Yeah. And do you see today that women are taking on leadership roles also whilst the family is growing up? Because if I look a little bit back in time, that there was a period where it was a little bit low, and then when they were around 40 or something like that, then they got the time again and I got full speed in. But it seems as it coming all together better, and hopefully the men are also better staying home whenever it's needing, see kids and whatever it may be.
Yeah, I honestly, and
I don't know.
I don't
It's maybe a
like the
difficult
pandemic,
question.
right? So
No.
I honestly give good credit to the pandemic on this one. Forcing everyone home, forcing a virtual work environment really opened up the eyes to that work-life balance. So
Yeah.
I think it was important for people to experience how life can be different. Not to say we want a pandemic, right? But there's different ways of working that still allow companies to be successful. And the pandemic opened up one of those opportunities for us. So I think because we've got a better, clear understanding of, hey, we can still be productive, we can still be successful, and we can still take care of our family. I think it was a big win for women to say, I'm not afraid to go forward, right? I figured out the balance, or within my spouse partner relationship, we've figured out a new balance and we can go after more things now.
Yeah, and being able to talk about it, I think that is such a great thing. No, I really like what I hear from you, because it's spot on. So, if we look back again, or are there any happenings in your career where you've seen certain things happening which has changed your way of thinking, or realized the way of thinking which has been important for you to move forward? It's not always easy to find those moments, but sometimes that one, or that person, it could have been a mentor in there who actually supported me, or something like that.
Yeah, so it's hard, right? Because I have this mindset of if you tackle a problem in real time, it doesn't feel like a problem, right? Or a mistake. If you're tackling things early, often, real time, they're true learning moments. There's no big ripple effect repercussion after the fact because we've already identified it, we've already course corrected. I don't know if that's answering the question, but I'm going to take it a little bit farther to say one things that help me in understanding what different tools I can take is I like to sit in on meetings that I don't necessarily have a deliverable for, right? I'm not
Yeah.
there as like a note taker. I'm not there contributing to the project or sharing in a presentation. I'm truly just there because I asked to be there and I was curious to be there. Um,
Mm.
and the reason I do that is so that way I can see how different people interact in different presentation styles, different meeting forums, who with different titles respond and interact different ways. What's their body language saying? What are their hand movements? So I just like to sit in there and to learn, like as much time as I can give myself to
Yeah.
learn. That way, when I'm going and working on similar things, and it might not be soon, right? I might sit in a meeting I don't need to be in. Uh, and a month later, I might be able to use some of the tips and tricks that I picked up. Or maybe it's 2 years down the road, I finally get to use it.
Mm.
But the purpose is I took time to go and learn
Yeah,
and to
absolutely.
see something new.
So before we conclude here, so what top piece of advice would you give to listeners, particularly entering leadership roles or taking on more responsibility and aiming to build performance teams, running a team? It could be a team manager, group manager, it could be any type of role. What tips and advice would you say build on these already from the beginning?
Yeah. So you're going to want to build on that communication, right? You want to build, and what that's going to do once you have the communication, you're starting to build the trust, that approachability mindset. The hard part is with those starting points, they can be such big topics, right? So a lot of people don't know how to get started in those things. Um, Book I recommend, Atomic Habits. It helps you create the new habit, right? If you think you have good habits, this one's going to help you bring them to the next level by just doing those small improvements, right? So again, start with the communication, build to that trust, that transparency and respect, that approachability. To do all that, it requires work within awareness and reflection, and at the same time, you're expanding your comfort zone and identifying who your authentic self is. So I feel like those are all the buzzwords I've used throughout the
Mm.
session today, circling them all together. They're all connected, right? And they can feel like big, heavy tasks to accomplish. But in reality, very small steps can get you a very long way. Okay.
So that is, if I translate it a little bit into our language, I'm hearing communication skills, which is actually something you can train on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hearing time management. That goes into habits. If you
Yeah.
That's many years ago, but it's still the most important training I've ever done in my life. That is the time management training, which has impacted everything I do, because that's where I can free up time. I can also make sure we meet deadlines, family comes together,
Yes.
travels, and whatever it may be. I see another piece here. What you say is that's building rapport with people. That's also where you build the trust and understanding what that means short term, but also what it means long term. And then awareness. There come some great trainings lately, not at least in emotional intelligence. Um, you have the resilience and things like that, which also builds upon these things. And I think what you're saying here, one of the most important things is start building these skills. It takes time, and it
Yes.
takes reflection, and it takes mistakes, and so on. And then over time, you say, "Yeah, I'm there," and then people also recognize that.
Yeah.
So ending up here, I think it's just a great thing talking to you, Amanda. There's so many good things in behind what you're doing. This is a podcast, The Growth Leaders. So, is there someone you would recommend for interview moving forward? Then I would be happy to listening, and hopefully we can get him her on the show later on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a coworker friend of mine, her name is Tara Buchler. She's the VP of Product Management inside of e2open, as well as a leader inside the WIN community for the Women Inclusion Network. She's been a great resource for me in my growth and development, as well as a partner on projects. So, Tara would be who I recommend you meet with next.
Oh, thank you so much. And it's good to hear that you are really boosting each other also here. Thank you, Amanda, for this, and thank you for sharing your insights. And we are looking forward to an engaging and informative conversation here on Growth Leaders moving forward. Thank you so much for today.
Yes, thank you so much.